Howdy friends and family, thank you so much for joining me. This is day 25 in the series that I'm doing called It Is Well. I wanted to quickly say thank you for letting me take the past 2 weeks off. And I just wanted to let you know that this devotional will only be going for 2 more weeks. My fall semester will start, and I was praying about whether I should continue making these devotionals into the fall semester. And at this point, this has really become at least a 2-man job. And my team will not be following me to college, so I'm not going to be continuing it in the fall semester. But let's go ahead and jump into today's devotional. Today's devotional is called Blessed Assurance, and we're actually going to be looking at the rest of the 3rd stanza today. And this whole stanza, Spafford has really been looking at the bad, and he starts it off by saying there is going to be bad times. The devil is going to tempt you to sin, and you are going to face trials. This is not an if situation, but a when situation. And I think really, as we've already seen in his song, that his response to this is just incredible. He says, "Let this blessed assurance control that Christ hath regarded my helpless estate and hath shed his own blood for my soul." You see, Spafford knew that bad times were coming. He was experiencing bad times when he wrote this song, and yet he still wanted the truth that it is well with his soul to be the thing that is controlling his thoughts and his actions. He knew that it was well with his soul and that nothing could take that away, and he wanted to keep that at the forefront of his mind. And we see this similar idea in Romans 5:6-11, which says, "You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Since we have now been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? For if, while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? Not only is this so, but we also boast in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation." And so Paul really starts in a similar way as Spafford does, saying, we are in this helpless estate. In this helpless estate we've looked at several times, but it's just this idea that we are broken sinners, powerless to save ourselves. But I think Romans 5 puts it in a very good way that we were actually God's enemies. But then Paul and Spafford move on to look at the truth of the matter, that, like he says in verse 10, while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son. God knew what he was getting into. He knew that we were sinners who could not save ourselves. He knew we were his enemies, and yet instead of fighting us, destroying us, completely getting rid of us, like some people might try to do with their enemies, or even ignoring us, he sent his own Son to die in place of us so that he would reconcile us and create this new friendship. And through his Son, we are justified, we are freed, we are saved, we are reconciled. I really like how the New Living Translation puts it in verse 11. "So now we can rejoice in our wonderful new relationship with God because our Lord Jesus Christ has made us friends of God." This is what it means that we have been reconciled to God. That no longer are we his enemies. Now we are his friends. And then we see the blessed assurance that Spafford was talking about. Because you see, while we were his enemies, God sent his Son to reconcile us, to fix our relationship. And now that our relationship is fixed, how much more do you think he wants you to be with him, to walk with him, to know him, to spend eternity with him forever? That is what it's saying in verse 10. And that is what I think is so amazing about this passage, is that we see how while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son. But now, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? You see, through his death, we were reconciled to God. But through his life, we also gain life. This is our blessed assurance. It's that hope that we talked about several weeks ago. The future hope that one day we will go to be with God forever, where there is no more pain or suffering. And in the last verse, verse 11, where it says, but we also boast, or your verse might also say rejoice, we see the same verse that we looked at on that day where we talked about our future hope. We see the word kahaumai. And it is this boasting, this vaunting, this rejoicing in that future hope. Not only do we know we have it, but we rejoice in it. This is the blessed assurance that Spafford wants to be in control of his life, even though he knows he's going to face bad times. He is singing and hoping and praying that this hope that he has would control him, not the trials, not the temptations, not even when he sins. He wants this hope to be in control of all that he is. If you're looking for a verse to memorize, we're going to be working on Romans 5:10. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.